So we are live. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to our masterclass. My name is Michelle. I am a teacher in Milano Meravigli with Emily. I have been living in Milan for 3 years now, and I'm originally from Pakistan.
Great. And as Michelle said, I am Emily, and we work in the same school in Milan. I am originally from the UK, from the middle of England, and I've been living in Milan for about a year, and the same with Italy in general. Okay, and I think we have one viewer now, so please write to us, tell us where you are, what your name is. Oh, perfect, Gianni, welcome.
Hi, Johnny. Hi, Marco.
Hi. You two are very dedicated. I think you have been in every masterclass that I have done. That's
Same.
amazing. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have an interesting topic for today, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
With bilingualism, for a word we don't say aloud very often, I think.
True.
Too many L's.
Too many bilingualism.
Mhm. Um, double trouble. So what do we mean by double trouble?
So this is a fun word in English. When we
Mm.
use the word double trouble, we talk about a situation where twice the number of problems, um,
Hmm.
in which twice the number of problems that usually exist. For
Hmm.
example, parents who have twins, right?
Yes,
They experience some serious double trouble.
definitely. That was my example as well. So that's the most common one. Okay.
Hi, Rosanna.
Hi.
Welcome, everyone. We're so happy you're here.
Hmm. So, Michelle, do you agree that bilingualism is an example of double trouble?
It can be,
Hmm.
but I think it is more often more beneficial than it is troublesome.
Okay, sure. So maybe speaking two languages has advantages and disadvantages that we can talk about today. Maybe also the differences between just speaking two languages and being bilingual. So
Mm.
they might be a bit different. So we'll talk about all of those things. Also, maybe raising a bilingual child or being a bilingual child. Think about whether it's a blessing or a curse. Okay. So,
Well, that's a
Michelle,
bit
are you? Hmm,
controversial, right? Because
yeah.
usually people think if you are bilingual or trilingual or
Mhm,
a polyglot,
yeah.
um, you have conquered the world. There are no
Yes.
problems.
Yeah. Which is an interesting point. Um, are you bilingual, Michelle, or
I
trilingual?
am.
Yeah, as you speak a lot of languages, I think.
I
Don't
speak
you?
a few here and there.
Which languages are they?
I speak English. I speak Urdu. I speak Hindi. Um, and I speak, but these are three languages that I speak like as a native speaker.
Hmm.
Then I speak Tamil, which I don't speak very fluently. So I'm not a native speaker in that
Right.
language because I don't get the opportunity to practice very much.
Hmm.
And as I've been living in Italy, The opportunities to practice Tamil have become fewer and fewer as time goes
Yeah,
by.
I can imagine.
Hmm.
Okay, so
And what
yours
about
is a
you, Em?
yeah, so yours, I think yours is a really interesting perspective. Um, I am not bilingual. I wish I was. Um, the only language I speak fluently is English. I I don't really want to say I speak other languages because I don't really. I understand French and Italian quite well, but speaking is
Mm,
harder. So I think you can
right.
sometimes divide these into different skills in languages that you have. So
Absolutely. But Em, I do think you are bilingual. You speak English and sarcasm fluently.
I mean I can read old English quite well, or medieval English. Does that count?
Absolutely. That's a whole other language.
Yes, I have my own weird languages. But in terms of recognized ones, no, I'm not.
Mm,
So it's interesting. We have two quite different perspectives on this.
mhm.
Maybe anyone watching, you can tell us: do you speak one language? Do you speak any other languages as well? Are you bilingual? So it's nice to have a range of perspectives on this.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we have some other questions which can help us to get into this topic. So maybe if we will discuss this together, but again, we really want to have some input from you in the comments. Um, so we discussed the first one a little, but maybe more generally, do you know anyone who is bilingual, and what are their circumstances?
So when they say what are their circumstances and parentage, etc., so they're talking about where they grew up, and if you have parents from two different cultures, you end up speaking two different languages. Absolutely, just like Marco says, people are often bilingual because of their parentage.
Mm-hmm.
This is this is usually true, absolutely. Gianni says that apart from Italian, he is trying to learn French and English.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Um, it is very common, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in my case, oh, we have Rosanna who says, 2 years ago, I had a colleague who was
Mm-hmm.
bilingual, Italian and German. Oh, that's an interesting
It
combination, right?
is, yeah, very different languages.
And very different cultures.
Yeah, but of course there is a land border. So if someone lives in Austria or Switzerland, that probably is likely.
Hmm. Absolutely. For example, my one of my flatmates
Mm-hmm.
over here, but she is from South Tyrol.
Mm.
She speaks German and Italian fluently, and her German is even better than her Italian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow.
Hmm.
I think
Mm,
you have
question.
that in the UK, for example. You have a similar thing with people who live in Wales or near the border of Wales.
Mm,
People who speak Welsh, quite a local language, and English. And the same in Ireland as well. I think maybe our Irish teachers have talked about this before, that they learn Irish
mhm.
in school as well.
Question two. What is the strangest mix of languages and cultures you have encountered?
Hmm.
I think the strangest mix that I've encountered where was when I met was a Japanese girl
Mm-hmm.
whose parents were from Japan and Africa,
Mm-hmm.
but her grandparents were European. So this girl
Right.
had really unique physical features because she was dark as I am,
Mm-hmm.
but she had the oriental eyes, so her eyes were almond shaped and tilting upwards.
Yeah.
But she had blue eyes, so dark
Wow.
skin, blue eyes, but tilted upwards, oriental
Mm-hmm.
looking eyes, and curly hair. That
Oh,
was just absolutely beautiful and
yeah.
so
Sounds
unique.
amazing. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Um, Johnny says, being in touch with the Maya staff in Padua, I know several
Mm-hmm.
people who are bilingual.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
Great.
Ha- mm,
Yeah, I think you were asking a question, Michelle. Sorry.
No worries. Guys, we're sorry for the confusion. YouTube
Mm-hmm.
is down today, so unfortunately, the quality of streaming is suffering.
Yeah.
We're trying to fix it, but unfortunately, this is something that is out of our control. So please bear with us
Mm-hmm.
for today. Okay, so my question was for us students. What is the strangest mix of languages and cultures you've encountered? Maybe you've traveled abroad and you met someone with really interesting heritage.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us. What about you, Em? Any strange
Um,
mixes you've seen?
I'm sure I have met people with a strange mix because my city in the UK was very multicultural.
Mm,
Um, I'm struggling to think of an example. I think there were lots of people with kind of Indian and Pakistani heritage and European heritage as well.
mm,
Um, I think there was someone who is maybe Indian and Italian at school,
mm.
um, but it was a long time ago, um, and I don't
Many,
think I
many
knew them
moons
very well.
ago.
Yeah, um, and I think speaking in terms of languages and cultures mixing in general, you get some very interesting films now or
Mm,
books now about culture clashes when people come together in maybe uncomfortable ways, um, partly because of immigration or because of traveling. You get some interesting media about that.
absolutely. Shall we move on to question three?
Yeah. So, question three, we have what do you think are the main differences between speaking a second language and being completely bilingual? This is an interesting question.
I think the main difference would be the fluency,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you speak a second language, you don't think in the language. You think in your original language and then you translate.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if
Yeah.
when you are completely bilingual, you think in the language, you dream in the language, you one giveaway, which is something I found out recently, is
Mm-hmm.
counting, right?
Mm.
When you count something or you're talking about money, for example, this cost 1,000 euros, this cost 300 euros. If you can do it fluently, in a second language, that means you are close to being bilingual. But if you are speaking a second language and you still revert to using your native language to when you refer to numbers, then you speak your second language as a second language and not as a native speaker.
That's very interesting. Yeah. I think also in European languages anyway, the idea of gendering objects or
Mm.
languages that have genders. Because I know for me it still seems very strange to give objects a gender. And I can't imagine naturally doing it. But I know there are many people who are bilingual, even if they learnt something initially as a second language, and now they can't imagine it any other way, which is incredible.
This is true, but gendering doesn't only is not only found in European language.
Mhm.
Arabic and Urdu also use genders.
Yeah, of course. Mm. So do you gender objects when you encounter them?
Yes, when I in not in English, but in
Hmm.
Urdu and Hindi, yes, we do
Yeah.
gender up. Yep, that way the structure is very similar to it's more similar to Italian than it is to English.
Interesting. And does that change the way you experience the world, do you think?
I think it does. Language definitely changes the way you experience the world. And I think one prime example is the concept of time,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So some people have a linear view of time.
Hmm.
And I think like people from the UK have a linear view of time.
Hmm.
But
Yes.
people from the Mediterranean have a different view of time, right?
Hmm.
Theirs is more cyclical. So it's, for example, someone in the UK would say, I'll see you at 1 o'clock for lunch. But
Hmm.
someone in Spain or Italy would say, I'll see you around lunchtime. And lunchtime could
Hmm.
be anywhere between from 12:30 to 2:30.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, very, uh, as you say, very different, maybe more fluid way you perceive time. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know some languages also don't have tenses in the same way, which would also affect time. Yeah, okay, we have some comments as well, which I'd like to bring in. So,
Mm-hmm.
Rosanna, thank you. Speaking a second language is to learn something that isn't natural. To be bilingual means simply to express probably yourself in different languages
Mm-hmm.
and with different cultural reference points. Yeah, definitely. I think
Mm-hmm.
cultural reference points, idioms, yeah, for example, is a big part of that. Um, yeah, great point. Thank you.
Marco says if you are bilingual, you master the language, you speak naturally, and you think in that language. Absolutely.
Hmm.
But in order to do this, I think you have to live in that culture. It's not just to study or practice. 100% agree.
Mm.
What do you think, Em?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Um, yeah, I think I am not fluent in Italian by any means at all. I'm not really very good, but there are certain words that I do automatically think about and remember just from
Mm-hmm.
being in the culture, from seeing it on street signs or in the shops. So I do think that makes a big difference. Yeah.
Definitely. Question 4. Do you think there is an age limit for someone to become completely bilingual?
Hmm.
That's an interesting question.
It is, yeah. So the traditional idea is that to completely learn a language, you should be a child. because you maybe learn more naturally. You don't think about the grammar rules and things like that so much. But whether that's true or not, I don't know. I think, as Marco says, if you live in that culture, maybe that helps you to overcome that. Yeah, maybe it depends on the individual.
I think it definitely does depend on the individual.
Hmm.
While it is easier to absorb language when you are younger,
Hmm.
obviously, right? Because your
Yes.
brain is still soft, you're forming the pathways, the
Hmm.
neurons are working.
Yeah.
So it's easier to pick up language and store it, and it becomes part of you. Whereas
Hmm.
as an adult, you have to put in more effort. It's not
Hmm.
effortless, but it's not impossible either.
Yeah. Do you think that translates to other things that you learn? For example, if you never learn maths as a child, do you think the same rule applies?
That's a good question. Ew, I don't like math.
No, I don't either.
So I think that has to do with my personal choice than anything else.
Hmm.
But I do believe that if you apply yourself to something and
Hmm.
you put in the hours, they say it takes about 10,000 hours to learn
Hmm.
to do something perfectly.
Yeah.
If you do put in those hours, it's hard to imagine that you will not see the results.
Yes, you would think, wouldn't you?
I
Let's
don't
hope
know. Um,
so. Maybe it depends on your natural skill a little as well, maybe,
yeah, that is
or
true. But
how what you do during the hours. But if you do apply yourself properly to a scheme of work, you can imagine there would be a result. Okay, Gianni, thank you. So there is not an age limit, but definitely children are facilitated. Yeah, yeah, or
mhm,
children. Maybe you're right, things like school facilitate children's
mhm.
learning.
Definitely. And I think as adults, we also encourage children, by talking to them,
Hmm.
introducing new vocab, asking them to repeat it,
Hmm.
even out of school. So I think that definitely does help. That's a really good point, Johnny.
Hmm. For sure. And Michelle, you said you are not completely fluent in Tamil, I think you said.
Yeah,
So when did you learn that? Did you learn that as a child?
I
As an
did
adult?
learn that as a child because my father's family is from the south of India,
Hmm.
from a state called Tamil Nadu. So my grandmother speaks Tamil and Hindi predominantly,
Hmm.
but it's primarily Tamil because that's her native language. So
Hmm.
that's why I learned to speak it when I would communicate with her.
Right.
And yeah, and then my parents speak it as well. But
Hmm.
unfortunately, I think I didn't become fluent in it because I didn't practice it as much as a kid.
Hmm. Yeah.
My exposure was very limited to my grandparents.
Hmm.
And even though I lived with my grandmother, I don't think I spoke it enough. I wasn't confident enough to speak it with other people.
Right. Yes. That's been my experience with languages as well.
Mm,
As I can read languages quite easily because it's independent.
yeah,
But the moment you have to interact, it becomes much harder, I think.
absolutely. I agree. And I think that's what we tell our students as well, right? And
Yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
Marco is saying as well. It's not just about study and practice. It's about experiencing the culture,
Hmm.
putting yourself out there and making
Definitely.
a fool of yourself.
Yes, I agree. Maybe some of our viewers have thoughts on this if you come from a place where there is a dialect. So I know a
Mm,
lot of our students come from places where there is a dialect that maybe your parents or your grandparents speak or you speak. Um, and maybe you can talk about that as well.
Marcus says that he learned some things in primary or secondary school and he still remembers them, even if they
Mhm.
weren't taught properly.
Wow, I think
Yeah,
me too.
me
Yeah,
too.
yeah, some strange things you remember
Hmm.
and some very useful things that you forget.
True.
Okay. I think we are probably ready to move on. Do you have any
Hmm.
other comments, Michelle?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So maybe we can discuss this ourselves, and then there is a reading text we can look at for more
Hmm.
ideas afterwards. So this is more about raising children in a bilingual way. So what are the dangers of raising a bilingual child?
Hmm, that's a good question. Do you think raising a bilingual child has problems?
Um, I don't think in itself it
Hmm.
has problems, but I suppose if people, for example, emigrate to a new place
Hmm.
and they primarily speak the first language at home, the child may have problems at school. I think that happened to a friend of mine whose first language is Mandarin,
Hmm.
and her parents mostly speak Mandarin with her at home. So then I think she struggled to connect the two lives that she had at school and at home
Mm,
until she was older. So that maybe I wouldn't say it's a danger necessarily, but it's something uncomfortable about it.
definitely. Um, One of the problems I had as a bilingual child would be that I would
Mm.
confuse words.
Mm.
Um, and especially when you're a child, I'd be speaking English and then I'd insert Hindi words or Urdu words.
Hmm.
Or something more common I would do is that I would confuse Hindi words with Urdu words because
Right.
Hindi and Urdu are similar the way Italian
Hmm.
and Spanish are similar.
Hmm.
So, and this would be a problem in school, right? Because in school, I would be writing, my essay in Urdu, and
Hmm.
I would end up using Hindi words, but written in
Okay.
Urdu.
Yeah.
And my teacher would call me up, and she'd be like, "Why? What's happening here?"
Oh,
So this
so
is something I think it can be
yeah,
quite confusing.
yeah. No, that's very easy to do because I know when I was at school, I think we had maybe 6 months studying French and then 6 months studying Spanish. And I
Right,
think during the first few weeks of the Spanish, I was using French words and because just the connection words and things like that.
right.
It's very easy to do, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And as a child, I didn't know I was doing it. I think that
Hmm.
is what is confusing to a child.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't understand why you can't mix words. Um,
Hmm.
it just seems completely normal. They mean the same thing.
Yeah,
Why not?
yeah. And there's something beautiful about that as well. You have if you use certain maybe Hindi words to express things that we can't say directly in English, then
Yeah.
that's wonderful, but confusing.
Confusing.
Okay, we have some more comments. So
Hmm.
Rosanna says, I think it's dangerous not, I think that may be a typing error, not to be a bilingual person today. Yeah, we are living in a globalized and open society, and to have the ability to speak different languages um, instead of a wealth, probably in is valuable or
Hmm.
is a treasure, maybe. Wealth just means money or richness. Okay, we don't really say wealth.
Hmm. It's an uncountable noun, so we just say
Yes.
wealth.
Yeah, very abstract. Okay. Yeah, that's a really good point, Rosanna.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree with you. It really is a way to connect with lots of different people, in English or in any language, really.
Johnny has said that he sees more positive aspects than dangers.
Hmm.
Perhaps a child can have small confusion in learning two languages, but only at the beginning. Absolutely. I think that it is definitely far more enriching to learn
Hmm.
two languages and to be bilingual. And this confusion, yes, it's only for about the first 10 years. And then you figure it out.
Yes. Do you find yourself going to different languages to express different things?
Yes, absolutely. For example,
Mhm.
when I am angry, particularly, I always
Right.
switch to Urdu um,
Okay.
or Hindi because
Yeah.
I feel the vocab is so emotive,
Mm.
and I think that it's very expressive. Whereas English as a language is a bit cold.
Mm.
So when I express my anger in English, I don't feel fully satisfied. But
Okay.
when I do express my anger in Urdu or even Hindi, I feel far more satisfied that I've expressed myself sufficiently.
I love that. That's wonderful.
But
It's
when
very
I,
true.
it
English
is
is not
true.
very satisfying. I think that's why people go to swear words so easily, to curse words,
Yeah.
when they're angry, because they are more satisfying to say. Maybe it's yeah.
But when I want to be the consummate professional, I always use English.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. It's, yeah, it's nice to have those nuances in your personality that language allows you to have. That's nice.
It does. What do you guys think? For those of you, well, all of you, our
Hmm.
viewers who speak two languages, do you feel there is a slight change in your personality when you speak Italian versus when you
Hmm.
speak English? You speak a little bit of Italian. Do
Hmm.
you do you feel there is a slight change in your personality?
Um, I don't think I'm good enough to express myself very well in it.
Right,
I think I can imagine it allows you maybe to be more dramatic. You
definitely.
can add more emphasis to things, whether that's about the size of an object or about your emotions. So I can imagine that, but I don't speak it enough for it really to be personal to me. So
Right.
okay, we have another interesting question at number two here. So when you are raising a bilingual child, is it always successful? And
No,
why not? So no. Okay, why
no.
no?
Well, again, speaking from my own experience, I learned Urdu and Hindi, but I
Hmm.
never picked up Tamil the way I picked up Urdu and Hindi, even though I learned them in the same phase of my life. And
Right.
I think part of that is because I had not sufficient exposure, but also no formalized structure.
Hmm.
So I didn't learn the alphabets, I didn't learn the pronunciation.
Mm.
Everything I learned was just things that I've picked up over the years.
Hmm.
So I'm not fluent enough in Tamil to
Hmm.
say that I am bilingual. I'm a native speaker because I
Hmm.
think you need a plan and you need some sort of consistency.
Yes.
And children need structure in
Hmm.
order to pick things up. And I think that's how I picked up the other languages because there was some consistency, there was a plan, there was formal education involved.
Mm-hmm. Yes. No, I think that's definitely true. That's probably why I'm better at French than any other language I tried to pick up,
Mm-hmm.
because I did have more education in that. But also I don't really know about the Italian language system, but in the UK, languages are not considered a priority, so the education is not very good. Which rightly or wrongly, I blame for me not being fluent in French or fluent in another language. But there is not really a lot of time allotted to languages. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Marco says, when I speak English, I change accent and attitude. Okay. They're two different cultures. Also, the way of speaking them changes. Okay. How do you change your attitude, Marco?
Mm.
Give us more detail there, because I imagine that can be a big difference.
I think I definitely have a change of attitude as well when I speak Italian. When
Mhm.
I speak English, I think I am more cold, more
Mhm.
formal. But when I speak Italian, I think I come across as warmer, friendlier.
Mhm.
I don't know why. I think that's just because of the way the language is. It's the language of
Yeah,
love, right?
I think it is a very warm language. I think
Mm-hmm.
Italian. And Gianni slightly disagrees with us for number
Mm-hmm.
two. On the basis of the experience I had, or maybe I have had, because your life is ongoing,
Mm-hmm.
it is always successful or always a success. So successful, an adjective. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that was wrong. It has always been a success.
Yeah. Okay. And Journey
Philosophy.
tries to emphasize the sarcasm in English. Okay. Yes. I think
Yeah,
English is very sarcastic. Yeah.
true. And I tried to be sarcastic in Italian, but it did not work out.
No, I can imagine that would be a big problem for me, because I like to be sarcastic.
Marco says Italians use more gestures, for example.
Mm.
Yes, the verb is to gesticulate.
Hmm.
You can always say Italians gesticulate more, so they use their hands a lot to speak.
Yeah. Or use more body language.
That's a good one.
But body language includes things like eye contact, how closely you look at people, more general ideas. Whereas gesticulate is more about what you can see more easily. Yeah, exactly. Michelle is doing there.
Spirit fingers.
Do you use a lot of? Do you gesticulate a lot, Michelle?
I do, and it's something that I've actually worked on very hard when I was a child because
Mm.
I went to a convent school run by Irish nuns, and they did not like us to gesticulate. It
Mm.
was very strongly frowned upon.
Okay.
Yeah,
Why?
so
Why is that? Too
because
dramatic?
a lady doesn't gesticulate.
Okay. Mm.
Yeah, is the right word.
Mm. Yeah. No,
It was
my mother gesticulates all the time, and whenever she is driving, I'm always concerned because she takes her hand off the wheel to gesticulate, and I keep wanting to tell her, no, don't do that.
yeah, so people do gesticulate, but I love that Italians do it because all my
Mhm.
life I've been told control your hands, do not do it. And here
Yeah.
they encourage it. So I
Mhm.
think my people.
Yes, yes. No, it's a nice trait. Very,
Hmm.
again, quite warm in general. I think.
Absolutely. The last question. What do you think the parents need to do to ensure success with minimum confusion?
Hmm. Well, I think some of it is not to criticize the confusion,
Mm-hmm.
because I think if someone is very angry about the problems that you have in general
Mm-hmm.
learning a language, actually, but especially for children who are confused, I think, because I think it will put you off. It will make you not want to continue to speak or to learn if
Mm-hmm.
if someone criticizes you. And other than that, I think, like you said earlier, Michelle, the structure,
Mm.
actually learning the the basics, learning the building blocks of the language, as well as I think Marco said, being surrounded by it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what do you think?
Absolutely. I agree with you. Immersing yourself in the culture, having some sort of education about the building blocks, the alphabets, the sound each alphabet makes,
Mm-hmm.
um, things like that. And I think the first point was crucial. Don't criticize the child when they do mix up languages.
Mm-hmm.
I think what else could be done is to create a little more structure. For example, language in my household, for example, um, my mother would use, we would speak in English because that was the common language. But there
Mm-hmm.
were times where, it was dedicated to a language. For example, if we were with my family, we would only talk Tamil. With my
Mm.
father's family, if we were with extended family, we would talk Hindi, for example. Um, Playtime,
Mm.
and when I was studying, my mother would focus on studying Urdu. So there was like 2 hours a day, every day, where
Wow.
I studied Urdu or Hindi. Primarily because my mother is not Pakistani, she
Mm-hmm.
is Sri Lankan.
Mm-hmm.
So she didn't speak Urdu before she got married to my dad. So that was in
Right.
her early 20s. So she was really focused on ensuring that we picked up the native language.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
well, so I think that definitely helped in terms of eliminating confusion and ensuring success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's very valuable. Especially if I think you were saying you can learn with someone else. Maybe
Hmm.
if there's more than one child, or maybe you learn as a family. Sometimes you study as a family. That's quite motivating, probably.
It is. My mother studied Urdu with me when I started learning Urdu. Like she could
Yeah,
speak it, but when I started learning Urdu formally in school, that's when she learned it as well.
yeah,
And
that's lovely.
yep, and now she speaks it as good as anyone from Pakistan, as well as
Hmm.
anyone from Pakistan.
Hmm. Yeah. Please let us know in the comments if you have any other ideas. Oh, Marco has a good question here.
Mm.
So to assure and ensure. Yeah. Um, so this is one that we may have to think about for a second. Um, y-
So what
mhm,
I would say is to assure someone is to make someone feel confident about something,
mhm,
right? Like I assured Emily that she was really good in English, at
mhm,
English. So make her feel confident she's good at English. Whereas ensure is to make sure that something happens. It's to
mhm,
have some sort of certainty.
mhm.
So
Yes.
an example would be, um, I ensure you I will do the, no, I wouldn't say I ensure, I would say assure. Um,
Yeah. You always
we,
assure a person of
yeah,
something.
we could say we need to ensure that we do the webinar at 11 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I would say ensure is always about an action as
Mm-hmm.
well. Another example would be let's ensure that the doors are locked. It's like to
Mm.
make certain at the end of the day that everything is safe. Whereas, as Michelle said, assure is maybe more about speech and more about making someone confident through speaking to someone. And you could also say reassure, of course, which is we often use when you want to give someone comfort, when you want to say something gentle to someone so that they feel safe, they feel confident. Yeah, thank you for that question. It's very, very interesting and useful. Yeah. Oh, and insure with an I. Yeah, in general, they are interchangeable. Insure and insurance are also more about money.
Mm-hmm.
If you insure a property, for example. Thank you, Marco, for that.
That was an intelligent question. I
It
liked it.
was, it was. I like questions like that. It makes us think, keeps us on our toes.
Yeah, I like that.
We also have a comment from Jani. I don't have. Remember, haven't is only for auxiliary verbs. I don't have a direct experience. I think it is important not to focus on the confusion that can arise. Okay, yes, as we were saying before,
Mm-hmm.
because sooner with an er or later it will be over. Yeah, absolutely. I think, as Michelle said, you can get past that initial stage of confusion as you grow older or more confident.
Um,
Yeah.
but there is one benefit, I think, of being bilingual that we haven't
Mhm.
touched upon, is that
Mm.
you learn to think in different ways.
Yeah.
Because language is so tied to culture and the way people think.
Mm.
When you learn more languages, you truly learn to think in different ways. And
Mm.
the box, the metaphorical box we all have, it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
think that's quite useful.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think we talked a little before about untranslatable words that
Mm.
we don't have direct equivalents in other
Hmm.
languages.
Hmm.
And I always like to look at lists of them because it really captures the culture, it really captures ideas that a culture or our language is really interested in. I'm sure you have lots of examples of those in the languages that you know. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, and wow, another question. We have another question to finish on. Probably we have about a minute left. Rosanna has asked the difference between to insure and to guarantee.
Okay, so this is a very good question.
Hmm.
When you insure something, you provide compensation if some specific risk occurs. For example, you insure your business for against fire, okay? And God forbid there is a fire. So the insurance, will provide compensation if the fire happens. They'll give you some money. Whereas a guarantee is to assure that something will get done right. A guarantee promises performance.
Hmm.
I think that would be the legal definition. Anything you'd like to add in?
Yes, I am less sure about the legal definition of guarantee, to be honest. I know you are better at that. Guarantee in general conversation can just mean that you are certain of something. If you say, I guarantee it will rain today, it means I am 100% certain it will rain today. And that may be just you being very confident. It may be that you have read a lot of weather reports, depending on the person. Okay, apparently it's similar to Italian, this difference.
Yep, it is.
Okay. Okay, so I think we are out of time for today. Please do give us any final questions or comments. But I think we've had a really good discussion today. Lots of good questions. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Michelle. We've had some interesting insights from you and the languages you speak.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Em, for your wonderful insight and your commentary.
Yeah, into the language of sarcasm. That's what I can do. That's what I can give you. Have a lovely afternoon, everyone. We'll see you again tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.